You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirit, but your feast is nearly over.
This is not my home. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon.
Why aren't you laughing?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
Welcome to the Batman Book Club, a podcast exploring the Dark Knight Library. I'm your host, Ryan Lauer. The Batman Book Club is a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network, hosted by Batman on Film. Just go to batmanonfilm.com, click on podcasts, and you'll find the Batman Podcast Network that has a whole list of other Bat-related shows that also like to dive into other nerdy subjects that we all love to frolic about in our free time. Now, thank you for listening to episode 147, Creature of the Night. Joining me, what a special guest I have for this. Returning to the show, this gentleman, he has a long list of credits for Netflix shows. He's written the recently collected Flashpoint Beyond. And I think I got this wrong last time I said the most important thing that he's ever done, but it's one of the most important things he's ever done is write Batman The Long Halloween Parts 1 and 2. It's writer extraordinaire Tim Sheridan. Tim, thanks for coming back to the show.
Oh, Ryan, my friend, thank you for having me back. Co-wrote Flashpoint Beyond. I don't want to sound like I co-wrote it with my friends Jeremy Adams and Jeff Johns.
Never heard of him.
Never.
I think written by Tim Sheridan,
the least famous writer of Flashpoint Beyond. Let's say that.
Very modest. I didn't tell you this, but I got you here now, and we're recording that this was all a big ruse. I know it says Creature of the Night, but I actually just got you back on here to keep talking the Long Halloween. So let's dissect it minute by minute.
That would not surprise me with you. And I could talk Long Halloween all day, every day, which is wild that we don't just talk to each other every day because
about the Long Halloween.
People would be so annoyed with us.
Well, they're already annoyed because it's almost a drinking game now. Every episode of I'm going to sneak in the Long Halloween somehow. And I just do. I can't help it. So
I do too, but it's usually because I'm showing off, trying to talk about my credits.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, look what I adapted.
I adapted the Long Halloween. No big deal. But
somehow I managed to stumble into that gig.
Somehow, some way.
Stumble. No, I'm really glad though to be talking about I would never come on your show. Ever.
No.
Unless it was to talk about something like Creature of the Night.
I was going to say, unless I had some dirt on you, which I don't.
That's true. That's coming at the end of the show, everybody. So stick around to the end.
Yeah, that's a good tease. You've done this before.
If you want the dirt, like and subscribe. Hit that bell for notification.
Make sure 5-star review, a long positive review. Stretch your vocabulary. But no, I think let's. It hurts to say this. Let's stop talking the Long Halloween and let's talk Batman Creature of the Night.
That doesn't hurt at all.
Okay.
For me. And are you going to set it up or how do you want to go? How do you want to do this?
I'm going to do some quick background info.
Okay, do some background and then I'm going to tie this back to the Long Halloween.
Yes, this is right. Can you just come on every show from now on? Every story, tie it back to the Long Halloween somehow.
I mean, I can't help it. That's where this is. I'm going to tie it back. So go ahead. You do your thing. I'm going to sit here and be in awe of your skills doing the deep background here on Creature of the Night.
There's just too much pressure now. The bar is high. So it was a book.
That's it. That's well done.
Written in 4 issues, 4 special issues, released between 2017 and 2019, written by Kurt Busiek, illustrated by John Paul Leon, the late great. It's been of course it was released physically. It was available digitally. It's been collected in a hardcover. I believe it's in a trade paperback now. It's available on DC Universe Infinite. And of course, the collection is available on my favorite app of all time, Hoopla. That's my background info, Tim.
Is that an ad for Hoopla? Do they sponsor the show?
They do not sponsor, and they should. Because
I hear you talk about Hoopla all the time.
Every single episode, because it is the greatest app
Why buy the cow when you get the milk for free?
Well,
And in this situation, you're the cow.
I get the thank you. Never been called the cow before. No, I'm getting Hoopla is like I get the milk for free, and then I still go and buy it because I appreciate how good the milk was. I mean, I'm gonna stop talking about milk now because that just feels weird. But Hoopla allows you to like try stuff and see like, let's read this, and then it opens avenues. And so people that don't use it yet, I just like read Hoopla.
I honestly cannot believe this isn't an ad. This sounds like every podcast ad I've ever heard.
I'm a bargain. So maybe that's why they haven't responded. They're like, if we respond, he's gonna stop. So let's just not say anything.
Get on the horn, sponsor this darn show, so that people like me get paid to come on. What are you doing?
I work cheap, yeah. So now it affects the guests. The guests would receive payment if Hoopla would sponsor this. But anyways, going off the rails.
By the way, that I have 2 cats, and they are running around like crazy cats.
Awesome.
Around, right? So if you hear weird things, I swear my playroom here is not haunted except by 2 naughty cats, tuxedo cats.
Now people listening to just the audio, they'll hear a noise and they won't know. It can become a game. Was that Tim or was that his cat? Cat 1 or cat 2?
I'm gonna start crinkling paper over here.
Yeah, here you go. That could be a fun game. Before I get into my questions, go ahead.
That was some good background on Creature of the Night. It was really good. Can I give you the reason why I wanted to come on and talk about Creature of the Night?
Yes, after 2 questions. 1, which version did you read for this episode?
For this episode, I read the compilation on DC Universe Infinite.
Okay.
But when I first experienced the book, with issue by issue.
For this, I read the collection on Hoopla. Back to Hoopla again.
Gosh,
of course.
Wild.
So I think you might have just answered it too. Of when did you first read Creature of the Night as it was coming out?
I mean, not until 28, late 2017, early 2018, I think is when I first picked it up.
November 2017 was the first issue.
So it would have been, I think it was late 20. I have no concept of time.
Okay.
But I can tell you what I was doing
when
I read it for the first time, or when I read issue, I think it was 1 and 2 for the first time. And when did issue 2 come out?
See, that I'm not aware of, because I know that we probably bring it up on how the release schedule.
That will definitely help.
Got spaced out,
so the reason why this book came into my life, it was the first issue was talked up and then handed to me by a friend of mine named Chris Palmer, who is known to you as the director of The Long Halloween Parts 1 and 2 and Superman Man of Tomorrow, 3 movies that I wrote at Warner Brothers Animation.
There's the connection.
Yeah. So Chris Palmer, when he was busily working on The Long Halloween, and I think it was probably before I started writing Man of Tomorrow, he had brought up this Kurt Busiek, John Paul Leon book called Creature of the Night. And he said, have you read it? And I said, no, I haven't read it yet. And he said, oh, you have to read it. You have to read it. There's so much in it that is, to me, so inspiring. And I hope, Chris, if you're listening to this, I hope I'm getting this right. But he was talking about how inspiring it was for him and how much it was inspiring him to do the work on the Long Halloween movies. And I said, oh, this sounds like something I really need to dig into then. He thought that there was, to him, I don't quite see this, but to him at the time, he felt like there was something similar to the storytelling in Creature of the Night with what I had done with the screenplays for Long Halloween 1 and 2. So he was appealing to my ego. So I was like, oh, I have to check this out. So I so he actually handed me the first issue, and that's how I got into it. And I was just hooked. I hadn't read Secret Identity, which was Kurt Busiek's Superman, spiritual companion to this book. And so I read that after, or in the middle of Creature of the Night. But I was enthralled, and there's a lot of reasons for it, and we can talk about those. But that was where I was and why it was happening. Was I was in the middle of, I had just finished writing Long Halloween, and they were starting production. They were working on the movies, and then I was getting ready to start working on Superman: Man of Tomorrow, and I fell in love with this book.
That's great. I started reading it. So I review on Batman on Film, still do issues. And so therefore we get the access to digital versions early. And Creature of the Night was one that I hadn't heard anything about it. It just showed up and I was like, it's a Batman book. I'll read it for sure. And so I read the first issue, and then I honestly don't remember when the second issue dropped. And I know that release got, I almost want to feel like scattered a little bit, maybe between 2 and 3, and then definitely 3 and 4, in which we learned after the fact health reasons for. I don't know if Busiek had some.
We should give a little bit of background on that. Like when they announced, like they were talking about. Apparently, this is what I've read, because I don't know Kurt and I didn't know Jean-Paul Leon, but when they were talking about doing this story, and then the way things work in comics is sometimes you'll pitch something and it kind of bounces around at DC, maybe between different editors, different groups, possibly. I don't know if that was the case with this. Sometimes the timing isn't exactly right or what have you. So you can pitch something and it sits for a little bit. You don't even know if it's ever going to happen. And then all of a sudden it happens. And I think what I read was that it got, the solicits went out for Creature of the Night. And they were like, well, I guess we're doing this. And at that moment, both Kurt Busiek and Jean-Paul Leon were dealing with health issues.
Yeah.
And so that right out the gate, they had kind of a difficult start because of that. And then the release of, it's a 4-issue story, but that release is over the course of a couple of years, and that's because of Jean-Paul Leon. He had a new diagnosis of colorectal cancer, and that was what he was fighting and working on, fighting at the time that he was working on this book. So obviously that's a really difficult thing to deal with. And so it makes sense why this, not only for that reason that this took an extended amount of time for the story to be fully realized, but also when you read this book and when you look at these pages, they are dripping with detail. They are, it is JPL at, I would say, his finest. Just beautiful storytelling and beautiful pages, and if it's the kind of thing that even if he hadn't been fighting health issues, I would have waited an eternity for pages like this, because it's rare that you see things this perfect in comics these days.
Yeah, in the collection, Kurt Busiek, he does he includes the kind of the proposal, but actually at the beginning of January 2022, the Tom King's Batman Catwoman special was released, and that was supposed to be Jean-Paul Leon, and I know that he'd passed away before he could complete it, so there were other artists that contributed, and they kind of made it a dedicated to him sort of issue, and it was extra long, extra pages, had some of his short stories included, but they had some nice write-ups. And Busiek, he comments on that at the very end, basically all about working with him on this book. And he brings up the fact of we both had, and that was the first time I guess that I had any idea that Busiek also had health issues, but he said, mine paled in comparison to John Paul Leon's. But
That's my
like
understanding.
a lot of it was just like basically kind of like in awe of this guy who going through that, and yet he still was managing to not only draw a book,
The
but
greatest work of his career.
yeah, like amazing work
Yeah.
to boot to do it. So there's a little bit more of like a backstory in case like I think you'd already mentioned of maybe it was kind of under the radar because of that release schedule and stuff, but that's more context on why. But now it being collected, I think more people are coming to it. I do think that it is building up and getting more notability.
By the way, I do recommend reading the collected version in which they publish Busiek's original pitch for
Yeah.
book. It's really great. As a
Mm-hmm.
fan of comics in general, I wish they would do more of that.
Me too.
It's enlightening and really it's interesting to see how the book diverged slightly from where he projected that it was going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Issue 4 is a different issue than I think that he pitched. So it's worth picking it up and reading that version of it if you can.
You say as a fan, but I mean, initially, I mean, long ago when you and I first talked, and we were talking The Long Halloween, and then when you were on here last year to talk, I said I like the insight coming from somebody who you're a writer for a living. So yes, you are a fan, but you're also a comic book writer. You've written for television, you've written movies. So as a fan, you said that it included that pitch, but I mean, as a writer too, do you like seeing that of like, oh, this is where I can gain to maybe help me or different?
What I gathered from that pitch was I wish that I could be as good as Kurt Busiek, because I would love to be able to just pitch this sort of top line version of the thing,
mm-hmm.
and then go out and explore and create it with my partners, people like John Paul Leon.
Yeah.
Because, and the reason I say that is because there's a lot of it's broad enough. It gives you the heart of the story. Like his pitch gives you the heart of it and tells you the framework and the format and what this is going to top line, what this is going to be. But it leaves so much room to then go in and explore it. Now, when I'm working on something, I just turned in an outline recently, and it's a long outline, and it's got a lot. It's very, very specific, and there's a lot of information to the point where I'm like, can I even fit this into 20 pages over a certain number of issues? Like, I don't even know, because I'm exploring so much in the outline phase and in the pitch. So my biggest professional takeaway from that was, oh man, I wish that I could have the credibility that he has, so that you can just sort of pitch, here's what I want to do. And then let me figure it out and explore it with my collaborators, and we'll see how it takes shape, rather than giving all the information and saying, this is exactly what it's going to be. And then you're just going out and executing, I'm just going to make sure that I check all these boxes that,
Gotcha.
Outlines are great, and pitches, really specific pitches, are great, and they can be very helpful, but they can also box you in. And I think in this case, we see how these guys didn't let themselves be boxed in by the pitch. Like they made some different choices and took some liberties and some different there. And Kurt specifically talks about in that collected edition, talks about how some of the choices that, or I think it was in that, maybe it was in an interview I saw with him, but he talked about how, some of the big swings, some of the big stuff that was in there were pitches that came from John Paul, that, it was, he had this idea that we do it this way, and it kind of changed everything. And you're not going to know that when you're just a writer sitting at your computer typing out a pitch or an outline, So, and kudos to editorial on this. I think Chris Conroy was the editor.
They say it started with, was it Bob Wayne started, and then Chris It went
I
to
think
Chris,
that's
and
what.
sometimes there's always fears of like projects go to the wayside then with the switching, but Chris was just
No,
as motivated as.
that was the thing that happened with me, and a very huge comic book you know the project I'm talking about, a really big name in comics who's been around for a while. We
Egghead. Yes.
we were collaborating on something, and the editor left DC, and
Yeah.
it just went away. The project went away. I ran into that guy last night at the Shazam Fury of the Gods preview,
I'll say no more,
and
but I ran into him. Literally ran into him.
that project
Yeah.
and how sad we are that it never got to be. But
Yeah.
these things happen. So it could have happened. It could have been that it completely derailed when Chris Conroy came in, but no. In fact, what we saw was Chris Conroy let those guys, explore it and rethink it and adapt. And I don't know. I would love to talk to Chris and find out. I'd love to talk to Kurt and Chris and find out what the ups and downs were in the process, what editorial brought to that process as well, because sometimes sometimes you don't even know you're looking for a note and you get a really good note. Sometimes you get a bad note too, and you got to be able to filter those out. But when you get that good note from an outsider, not even out, it's an insider outside perspective, is what it's like having an editor reading your stuff and helping you along the way. And if you trust them, and if they know what they're doing, like people like Chris do, and Andrew Marino, my editor at DC, then it can be, you can discover exciting things. And by the way, that's what I want to talk about, which is that discovery is what this whole book and the type of book that Creature of the Night is. That's what it's all about. It's not under, I don't think it's not under the Elseworlds banner, but it is essentially like an Elseworlds story. And the whole idea of Elseworlds stories, the idea is for them to be a self-contained thing that casts these archetypal familiar characters that we've known for so long and that we think we know inside and out, and cast them in a different light and see them from another angle and maybe learn something new about them. I don't think I've ever read a book or seen a film or anything about Batman that so, to me, beautifully explored the psychosis of the creation of the Batman. The psychosis at the center of that, and the drive out of grief, and we know that as a concept. We do. We've heard about it. It's been in the books forever. But this way of coming at it in this story is unique, and it has the ability of letting you divorce yourself from everything you think you know about Batman right out the gate and see it through new eyes, quite literally in this book. And then what that ends up doing for us, like all the great Elseworld stories, is then elevating those characters and adding new layers to them that then hopefully we see get threaded in. All the guys, all the kids, all the people who are reading Creature of the Night, anybody who reads Creature of the Night now, who in 10 years is going to be writing Batman comics or cartoons or whatever, who knows what dimensions they're going to bring that they inherently understand about Batman, because they experienced Creature of the Night at a formative age. To me, that's the magic of these kinds of stories.
So this one in particular, like I said, I read the first 2 issues. I think I read the third, maybe I didn't, but I hadn't read the final. I didn't read the story in full until for this episode. And by the time in reading it, it's not just like, final page done, got everything, all good. It was like
you have to sit
thinking. Yeah. I sat and thought about it. I'm like, I don't know what I think. I don't know how I feel. I don't know. And it was going back through, jotting down notes, rereading pieces that then it was like had some aha moments. And I'm like, ooh, well done.
Well, what you're experiencing is what it is to be in the presence of art.
Yeah.
I think what's cool about this, one of the great things about this is there is subjectivity involved. There is, you're looking at this work of art and you are I think this is what it has in common with the Long Halloween. Ding ding ding. Is it is open to your interpretation in many ways, and it is not like you, as you were saying, as you were alluding to, it's not like you check a box at the end and well, here's the moral of the story, kids, and now it's complete and I'm moving on to the next thing. It is something that's going to sit with you maybe for the rest of your life, and maybe you won't even know it. It's in your subconscious now. And who knows how that's going to manifest itself in your understanding of Batman as you experience him in other stories, later on.
I'm going to,
but also in your own life, the kinds of things that Bruce Wainwright in this story is going through, who knows if we're ever going to have to experience them. And, he is us. Bruce Wainwright is a Batman fanatic. That's from childhood. He's a Batman fan, and it completely influences everything about his being, his physical being, his mental well-being and being. That's one of the great magical things about it, is we're in the story because he's us.
I'm going to end up asking you a question later on, almost like Jack Skellington. What does it mean? And I really am going to be so surprised if your answer is the same as mine. I don't think it will be. So
I would be shocked, because I think that there's a lot of different layers here. There's a lot of different ways to experience it. And we sort of take everything about us that we are to date into this story. And that's what determines what we get out of it, I think. So we'll see.
On the surface, we can get the nods. We're introduced right away of kind of like, this is almost just like an everyday story. Batman is a piece of pop culture. It's fiction. The main character, Bruce Wainwright, is reading Batman
basically
comics.
Our world. Like, it starts in the 60s, right? It's our world. Batman is a comic book character, and there's a kid who is a huge Batman fan. And one of the reasons he's a huge Batman fan is because the kid's name is Bruce Wainwright.
Bruce Wayne, right? It's so dumb. Sorry, I'll cut that.
He's got a sort of uncle that is that he calls Alfred, which is an amalgam of his first name and middle name.
Alton Frederick Jepson. Alfred.
So he calls him Alfred because he's obsessed with Batman,
and it's like, how cool. And you can totally relate that as a kid, if you had an Uncle Al this and that, and you could come up with Alfred, of course. Oh my gosh, it's Alfred.
Feels something like the Alfred role in your life, it's and this kid, his name, the name of his sort of uncle, I keep saying sort of uncle because he wasn't actually his uncle, right? Wasn't he a friend of the family? I totally forget now if he was actually related to his mother, or if he was an uncle of his mother, or what. I don't know. But he those are the innocuous things that are the parallel. But then
great uncle. My niece's child. Great uncle.
So he's actually his mother's uncle.
There you go.
I keep saying sort of uncle. I feel bad because I guess he's a great uncle. So that's sort of
confirmation. Exactly. He's an uncle.
Yeah, well, he's a great uncle.
Yeah,
he's a terrific uncle.
But I'm child.
Yeah. So those are the innocuous things, the names and stuff.
Yeah.
But then, of course, you saw it coming a mile away, right? His parents. Bruce Wainwright's parents are murdered in a botched robbery attempt, And yet another parallel to
Mhm.
Bruce Wayne, Batman's life for this kid. This is a kid. And what does that do to him? How does that influence him? And that's the journey we end up going on.
Mhm.
He is you know uh, he's a fan who is suddenly confronted with the reality that he kind of is Bruce Wayne,
Yeah.
and then his life sort of evolves from that point.
I mean, not that there's ever been a Wayne murders scene that's been like, oh, that was cool, great, or anything like that. But this one, I think, yet another way that it's very, very effective in how it's done too. And yet the murders themselves happen off screen. But it's still like, I think it's when they're, because it's on Halloween night and trick or treating, in which Bruce is dressed as Batman. But as you see, I think as you read and you get that panel of like, you get the hint that the door's been busted in. I think you just know, this is where we go down that path of the
the
journey of the Waynes. Like,
it's coming. Yeah.
And which it's done very highly effective. Now, there's two things I think that I thought of here. The aftermath, if you will, of the Wainwrights being murdered. I think a way that Busiek does a really good job of avoiding Bruce as, like a negative, and that you attach to this Bruce Wainwright, is that as a child he doesn't understand, but on his own as an adult he does understand. Two things in that: one, why he didn't, like, Alfred didn't take him to live with him. Bruce just thought it was his Uncle Alfred that didn't want any. Why can't I go live with him? He doesn't want me. He feels that rejection as a child, but he understands as an adult without Alfred having to tell him. And there's something with that of, like, I think relatable both as you're a child and then as you're an adult talking to kids of, I don't want to talk down to you as if you, and tell you won't understand, but I hope you do when you get older, when you're capable of understanding the situations.
Well, and I'm assuming everybody's read the book who's listening to
Spoil
this.
away. We're spoiling everything.
But I think the thing that I love about that moment, about that thread that you're talking about Alfred and young Bruce and the choice to not take him in, to have him live with him. The reason why is revealed later. I kind of figured it out right away, but I think a lot of people maybe didn't get it until later on. The reason is because it's the 60s and the 70s, and Alfred is gay, and he has a different kind of life that is not something that is considered, society would look at that as a bad environment for a child to be, at that time, to be brought into. And what's fascinating about it to me is Alfred is being Alfred, and he's making a choice to protect young Bruce.
Yeah.
Not from the fact that he's gay and has gay friends and lives, his gay lifestyle in Boston. Mm-hmm. But he's protecting him from the stigma that society has toward Alfred and toward his life, and how that stigma would then wash onto young Bruce. And he's being protective of him, but it is not for the surface reason. He's not agreeing with, maybe he's not agreeing with what the world would say about him, but he's protecting him from all of that other garbage, which is really caring foster parent kind of thing to do, or step parent thing to do. So I mean, that angle on it I really like, and it's also a sign of the product of its time, in that of the story's time, or where the setting's time, I should say. So it's all very believable and understandable. That's why he doesn't tell him. I mean, you're like, why didn't you just tell him? Just tell him, look, they won't let you live with me because it's just not going to work. But he doesn't want Bruce to look at the world that way.
Yeah.
He doesn't
So
want
I mean, I said a way to get you on Bruce's side. It's a way to get you also on Alfred's side.
totally.
Too, of like, he's exactly for all the reasons that you just said, of like the protecting him and everything. And it is the, not to talk down to a child, but like, I just don't think that you understand at this point in your life. Give some maturity, some life experience, and then I think hopefully you can understand why I did what I did. And Bruce does realize that. And so
It's
I think,
interesting because that was my experience as like a young gay man, and I had older gay friends, and they believe in the closet, like, but that because that's just the way it is. Or they weren't necessarily in the closet, but they never really talked, unless you were they were talking to other gay people, they didn't talk about it. It just wasn't part of it. It wasn't spoken about, and and I'm, this young buck out of school, and I'm like, no, fight the power, rights, and they're like, oh, rolling their eyes at me. And there's benefits and drawbacks to both sides of that, but it is interesting that Alfred is saying, hey, he's essentially saying, I'm not going to tell young Bruce about how crappy the world is because I don't want him to become cynical.
yeah.
Which tells you that maybe Alfred isn't cynical about it. That he's like those older gay men that I knew when I was coming up, who were like, hey, this is just the world, And meanwhile, I'm like, fight them all,
Yeah.
So it tells us, like you say, tells us a lot about Alfred. Which in turn tells us a lot about Bruce.
And to kind of go along with that, but not so much on the Alfred part, but it is Bruce kind of like the second part in the realization is Bruce going to boarding school then, and then he's doing these trips over to France and then in Arizona and these kind of meets and stuff like that. And the page is really great in how it interjects between Alfred's like journal writings and then Bruce's journal writings and then back to Alfred's. And so you're getting both perspectives of what Bruce is doing as a child, in which, Bruce just thinks it's like, what's he say? They didn't want us, so they sent us away. But it's like, Alfred says, let's see, after they went to ranchers, they were writing lessons, nature studies, but I think Bruce figured it out that these were the children whose parents were dead or traveling or busy. Just something to do because they didn't have homes to go to.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, that goes back to Alfred's like, okay, fine, you can hate me.
Yeah.
Hate me, but don't hate the world. Don't I would rather you be mad at me and think ill of me than you would about the world, because it's going to change the man you are. I think that's really just amazingly cool. And I think I would love to track that in the in continuity Batman Alfred relationship.
Yeah.
I wonder if the point is that wasn't the Alfred that Bruce had in continuity, or or was it? I don't know. But I'd love to see that, explore that. Which
this
is what
Alfred
I mean,
and
why this gives us a chance to have a perspective on these characters, these archetypes that we don't normally get in continuity, and it lets us see them from a different angle and go, oh, I wonder, what was that? Is that a motivation? Was that there? By the way, can I just say this?
Yes,
and not to trivialize like the sort of emotional stakes of all of that and the big sort of giant sweeping emotional nature of it, but did anybody else ever think that Alfred in continuity, we saw Alfred have relationships with women, but maybe it's just me because I was a gay kid. I always saw Alfred as an older gay man. Like I always saw him as a gay man. And I wonder if that was just me. Even though I knew about the classic stories where, they would have him, but like that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I mean, he
said relationships with women. I'm struggling to even think where he's not, serving the family duty as a butler for the Wayne family. Like, I don't, you're saying relationships with women. I'm like, nothing comes to mind of that kind of backstory.
I think in like Silver Age stuff, like we saw,
okay.
There would be a mention of something or there would be someone that he took an interest in or something like that. I think there were occasionally we would have blips of of a non-sexless Alfred. You know,
Well, while Bruce is off fighting dinosaurs in Dimension X, Alfred's, he's just having a party at the manor.
I mean, who do we think they had Harriet was?
Yeah, that's true. They were hosting key parties. Yeah, it was wild.
Hosting key parties. No, but I mean, I know that it's I don't mean to like make it about something so specific. It's just that it's a quirk. It's a thing that Kurt Busiek made this Alfred gay in his story in Creature of the Night. And when I read that, I was like, yeah, of course, because Alfred's gay, because from my perspective, Alfred is such a sort of quintessential gay uncle character, but
Great uncle.
I wonder if everybody else
was great uncle.
Oh, great uncle. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Gay uncle. Great.
He said uncle. Sorry, Tim. Don't want to pull that card, but he's a great uncle. So
he's a terrific.
We did the work to figure this out. Okay, he is a great uncle.
So, you know what? Sound off in the comments. Is Alfred canonically gay? Let's talk about
it. There you go.
It's going to infuriate people. It's going to infuriate people, and I can't wait to be like, okay, but then show me the big swinging dick hetero Alfred stories because they were not there. Like, come on.
Big announcement coming this summer in DC Comics. The Alfred you thought you knew. Swinger. The Alfred Pennyworth story. Swinging. No, it'd just be swinging. Anyways.
The Alfred story.
There are 3 parts,
the
actually.
Of Batman's sexy butler.
Yeah. You saw Jeremy Irons chopping wood in Batman vs. Superman.
Oh.
Okay. Anyways.
Did you say chopping or...
chopping? He was chopping. Right. But okay, so I say Jeremy Irons. But actually, I do think it's funny because in book 1, I do think that Alfred looks like Jeremy Irons.
Oh, interesting.
I think it might be in book 3. There are a couple panels in like the it's not Wayne Industries. It's Wayne, the business that he's in. There, he looks like Michael Goff. Alfred from the Burton and Schumacher movies. There's a panel
in issue 3. He looks like him.
There's a couple panels in there, and then there's one that's a side panel that like totally looks like a Neil Adams Ra's al Ghul. Now I'm saying this like not as if like there's inconsistency. It's just like as he gets older and stuff like that. Like, I don't know why those popped in my mind. I'm like, oh man, I don't know.
I'm flipping through. Oh, right, there it is. Yeah, you're right. He does look like Michael Goff there. That's true. Look, I'm flipping through these pages right now, looking for the examples of what you're talking about, and I'm just reminded of how beautiful these pages are to me.
Yeah,
I think when you flip through them, it's great to do it on your iPad because you can see the color wash on each page that John Paul Leon brings to it, right? Where like sometimes each page sometimes has its own sort of wash tint to it, and it's almost like different dreamy versions of sepia, and then sometimes it's a whole scene will have, and I would love to go through and track when he chooses to leave the color wash over the course of multiple pages or scene of a whole scene, and when he just changes it page by page, because he's telling me something and I haven't tracked what it is, which is a great reason to go back and keep rereading this book all the time, to sort of track all the little things. And by the way, the other thing, and you alluded to this earlier, is the terrific lettering in this, where you have these the captions from Alfred are all in script and like the writing of an older gentleman in his diary, and then when Bruce is younger, it's very much a sort of jumbly kids sort of, not like Cars for Kids kind of fun, but it's a little bit more haphazard, a little bit more childish, and which is nice. I mean, there's color distinction too, but we're flipping between narrators, and they make it very easy for us to do that and to get in the mindset of each of those characters.
Well, and then later on too, like Robin starts writing into a journal as well, so brings another one in, and it's pretty seamless. As you were saying, I'm flipping through pages on the iPad. One that stands out to me is 118, where Bruce is at the at the headstones of his parents, and that background. So I've been reading some finally been reading some Swamp Thing, Bernie Wrightson and Len Wein, and that just like that image. So with, like you said, of the almost like the sepia, like that background looks drooping, like in the coloring with it. And I just thought of that, like Wrights and some of the background imagery of Wrightson from, of the 70s, and how that looks really good, of like down in, Louisiana and stuff, and like drooping backgrounds.
Everything is that's linear, and it's all pointing toward the ground. Everything's coming. I don't understand art. I don't at all.
I don't.
But I see, exactly what you're talking about, how interesting it is that everything is falling toward Bruce as he's there at the headstones. What's also interesting is the inset on that page of what is essentially a tighter shot of tree branches and leaves that have the effect of being in more detail than what you get in the larger splash. And yet, when you really look at that inset panel, it's not like it's super detailed. It's just heavier ink and leaves, which you don't see in the larger panel, which is interesting.
And it's one of those, I don't know, sometimes stuff like that. I know I could never ask the artist because he's no longer with us, sadly, but like, I don't know, like you almost want to say like, why? But I'm not saying that in a way of like, it looks like,
I want to know why you did it. I know what I'm getting out of it, but what did you,
because
you getting out of it as the artist,
It's just almost some of those I just decided to do this. And I think it looks good. So
that's a consequential scene, by the way, that you're talking about. That's a huge scene in the book when he discovers the headstone for his stillborn brother, Thomas.
I wasn't trying to go there, but that's an awesome way for us to let's go into the creature of the night of this Batman, because that is what took me so long to come up with. To me, what does it mean? What does it stand for? Waiting for the aha moment with that. So because it was okay, we're dealing with, I didn't know where the story was going. I remember this when first reading it, because I'm like, okay, so this is dealt with very realistically. This is real world. Batman is comic book character. Up to this point, they haven't referenced I think Alfred says like the gloomy movie. 89, of course.
89, which is so funny to think of as a gloomy movie.
It's a gloomy movie now.
You watch that now and it's the campiest of all camp fests. This is one shade from Batman 66 now, like by today's standards.
It was so dark and gloomy, but this, I was like, is he projecting and making this up? Is he just seeing this thing that just kind of spurred out of a tornado of leaves, and now it's a bat? But then it definitely, you're seeing people reacting to this. So I'm getting the impression that this thing is real. Yeah. And I was really like, how are they going to explain this? What is this?
The mystery at the core of this book is that, Batman, this creature of the night, this weird force of nature version of Batman materializes seemingly and is going after criminals and protecting maybe Bruce, in the night. And the mystery is like, what is it? Is this real? Because Batman is a fictional character in this story. So how is this even possible? What is it? And that is what Bruce Wainwright is trying to sort of deal with and figure out, because he doesn't know. And that's why it's so important when you get to this scene, when he's at the grave, when he finds this tombstone for a stillborn twin brother named Thomas.
Yeah.
And he's looking for an answer, and he thinks he finds one here, which is in this sort of mystical, supernatural idea of the ghost, the spirit of his stillborn brother, haunting him in protecting him. And, and that's what this Batman manifestation is. and so it's right at the point when you're like, you need some answers, you need some guesses about what this creature of the night is.
Yeah.
And so he kind of square peg round holes this idea into being and runs with that for a while, and he keeps calling this creature Thomas, and in some ways it you buy it. You feel like that could absolutely, that's what's happening. Because of the way that the Batman character responds to him after that, you get the feeling that this is a character who cares for Bruce,
it's protective
for him and protecting him. But then as the story moves on, and Bruce in issue 4 becomes one with the Batman manifestation, and it points more clearly in my mind to just a very deep psychosis. But it's so weird because Robin and Alfred, at least Robin talks about it, which is the fact that he they see Bruce leap off of a building and take wing. But when you reread it, it almost is like, you can read it on one level that's what she's saying, that I don't know how to explain what I saw. But you could also read it as she doesn't understand she doesn't understand his psychosis. She doesn't understand what she saw, because he believes it, and he will do anything, he will do wild things and put himself in danger, and she's trying to put the pieces together. So it seems like it might be a little bit of a sleight of hand, where you're like, is she talking about that she saw it, that she saw him become the creature of the night, or is she just talking about his mental illness?
I walk around every day questioning my intelligence, always, but here I'm a very literal. I think I take it at face value. So what I see is, oh my gosh, the Batman just absorbed Bruce and he went flying off a building. That's what happened. That's what Robin saw. Now, how did they explain it? And it's never until after the fact that I start to piece together of, maybe not completely literal, metaphorical. Like, it's like, think about that a little bit. Pull on those threads a little and see what you get.
And why? But why? What are you ultimately, you pull on those threads because it's not because you want to know what they're telling you to know. It's that you want to understand. You just want to understand the characters and what their motivations are and why they're doing what they're doing.
For me, a little bit, I think it's because we've just jumped kind of significantly from very realistic and grounded to now we're going supernatural. So I want to grasp so that I can also make that jump and that I don't just get dismissive. And I'm like, wait, hold on. What are they trying to say?
I mean, I first of all, I love living in metaphor. So I'm like, let's just totally look at this as metaphor.
You're a writer at heart. You love metaphors.
And if you want to look at it literally, there is another angle on Robin too, which is that Robin in this story, much like canonical Robins, experienced a similar trauma to the Bruce character. And in that way, one must wonder if what appears to be a supernatural manifestation of what is possibly this grief-stricken Bruce's psychosis exists and is, if that's visible to the Robin character in this story, is that just a manifestation of her psychosis and what her grief has turned into? That's up for question and debate as well. But what does that say? This is what I'm concerned about. What does that say? What that tells me is something that I kind of know about Batman, but have never thought about before, which is that Robin, and for this well, let's say Dick Grayson and Tim Drake specifically. Robin is Batman's truest believer.
Yeah.
Robin is the one who believes in the Batman more than anyone else in the world. Dick Grayson, certainly. And Tim Drake, very certainly, because Tim Drake got to experience a lot more of a world with a Batman and a Robin. Like, essentially, I think what Tim Drake believes in is Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
I think Dick Grayson believes in Batman. And so therefore it makes sense for the Robin in this story to be the one who sees Bruce as Batman. Even if it's a psychosis, even if it's a manifestation that doesn't really exist, what you're telling me is you're reminding me that Robin is the person who Batman saved, who went through a similar grief experience that he did. Is his loyalist ally and the one who believes in him the most and sees him as Batman more than anything. That's a beautiful little ribbon that is tied in their story in this book for me. Like, you're telling me that she's not just Robin in name only, which she kind of is most of this book, I feel like. But in that moment, it's like, no, she's Robin in spirit in that regard.
In spirit, and even a little in, I mean, for everything that you just said, similar origin in a way of parents, murdered. Bruce helps Robin. And then also, I think just Robin is one to keep Batman from going too dark. I mean, you can say that of like literally trace back the origins of Robin. It was to not have Batman be so dark. It was to lighten up a little bit,
maybe not Jason so much.
No, not Jason so much. Well, almost.
First Jason, yes.
Yeah.
Post-crisis Jason, no.
Not so much. But like here even too, I mean, I feel like she's a very strong advocate therein. I don't know if it is towards the end of book 3, but it's all over in book 4 of stumbling on him and trying to be like, Bruce, did you stop taking your pills and medication? Like, she is there to, keep him from diving into the darkness and stuff. And I'm like, well, that's just instantly what went in my mind of like, the name of Robin justifies the name of Robin in the story. There's your, without beating over the head. It's not like she showed up wearing a yellow cape and a red shirt and, green bottoms or anything like that. It wasn't that literal. It was, I mean, it's there in spirit. And I think that is another like
I just
great job by Busiek.
Love it. I love that he's not hitting you over the head with anything.
Yeah.
It's not like, you know what? None of it feels like an Easter egg.
Yeah.
All of it feels like a real psychological exploration, a real character, a deep character dive, in a different area of the pool, like, or a different pool entirely. Like, let's take a little dive and let's really dig into what is at the heart of these characters and why they need each other and why we love them. This is not let's be clear. For anybody, if you've read this story, you probably need to hear this. And if you haven't read it, you should hear it too. This is not an easy story.
I agree.
This is not you don't read this and think, oh, that was a lot of fun, and you're moving on. Like, this is real stuff. Like, it's deeper than a lot of comics go. In that way, it's a lot like, or it's sort of modern day comics, I think. I mean, I think to me, the legacy of this book, it sits in the pantheon with something like The Dark Knight Returns, which I think it checked some of the same boxes of doing a real deep character dive on Batman by sort of shaking it up, by showing you Batman in a completely different environment and situation. And also artistically, shaking up the page for you so that you understood immediately that you were seeing something very different, even though there are familiar elements. This book has familiar elements too. I mean, he's constantly throwing in these great pages and panels that are like Golden Age Batman or Silver Age Batman panels, which are really fun anchors, and I think that we had that even in Dark Knight Returns. We felt like, okay, well, I know this is Batman still. I'm still with him, even though this is a future and it's apocalyptic, and who know, I don't know what this world is that he's in, but I understand parts of Batman more having watched it or read it. And that's how I feel about this. I wish someone would be bold enough to make this into a movie. I think coming at the Batman story on screen from Creature of the Night perspective, to adapt this to the screen, I think it would advance people's appreciation and love of Batman. Some people would reject it. They wouldn't quite understand what it is. But this is a little bit of a thinker of a story, certainly. And it's not going to give you any easy answers. But in the end, I think it's the kind of thing that'll sit with you. For me, it's done this. It'll just sit with you all the time. It's going to just hang out in your subconscious, and it's something for you to pull on whenever you're reading about these guys, either these characters or whether you're facing these types of situations that he's facing in your own life. We talk a lot nowadays about mental health and well-being, and we're much more open about talking about things like that. And we understand the value in being open and talking about mental health. And I think in some ways, comics still tend to be a little bit behind the curve on that. I mean, what we see, if we really strip it down, what we see in Batman comics is Batman punching out mentally ill people who, when he's done, when he gets them, he puts them in where? Not necessarily a Blackgate or, a prison or something. He's putting them in an asylum, and that's tricky. Are they evil, these people? Maybe. Are they sick? I think we all agree that the Joker is sick, that Two-Face has a sickness,
So there's, you probably come across it. It's cyclical, always comes around. Someone thinks that they have the hottest of hot takes, and it's an original thought that, what, Bruce Wayne, he could help a lot more people if he would just do something with his money instead of dress up like a bat and beat up people, blah blah blah.
Beat up.
Love that this story. To me, that's what I thought of right away. Of Bruce Wainwright is doing that.
He's doing
like helping people.
He's doing the Wayne Foundation.
Yeah, he's doing the Wayne Foundation. That's Robin. That's what he does with Robin. And he's like, she's almost like the first one that he is like. And he even had, there's a whole, I don't know if it's 1 page or 2 page, but a bunch of panels as he's explaining this. Like, it's almost like this mission. Instead of him like, Alfred, I want to suit up as a bat and blah, blah, blah. It's Alfred, I want to use the money, establish basically foundation and help people, that kids that end up in a situation like I did. I had the money to help me with that. There's people that won't have that. I want to help.
There's no metaphors there. That is Batman, canonical Batman.
Yeah.
He's got Wayne Industries and he's got Wayne Tech, and he's, they make a lot of money doing the stuff they do, but he also has a foundation. He has, he literally takes in orphans and raises them. Like, this is something we've known about Batman. And it is why I think Bruce Wainwright they say it in the book. He's doing it because he's trying to emulate Bruce Wayne. And he's not putting on a costume necessarily and punching people out in the streets, but he's doing the thing he can do, which is to care for people who need help. That's what he wants to do. He goes to Alfred and he has that conversation. He's like, I want to do more. We're making money, but I want to help people. Let's use some of the money to help people. And that's like, I don't know that we ever saw that conversation in the comics, but that conversation took place. You know,
there's countless examples of that in comics, and I mean Batman the animated series of Wayne Foundation and doing this and doing that, and I feel like he goes to the extremes, in which I did relate a little bit here with like there are ones that are not interested in the help, that are consistently just doing the bad things, and that's Batman's Rogues Gallery.
Yeah,
those are the ones that need the creature of the night to deal with that, in which we get here. And then this I thought was really interesting in how Busiek approached how I just keep calling him Thomas Wayne Batman. Are you familiar, Tim?
I've heard of him.
You've heard of him.
I work with that guy.
Oh yeah, okay. The creature of the night, not like Bruce just thought it was, he was doing the right things, being smart, making the right choices, and actually creature of the night was kind of impeding on that and falsely setting up someone for Bruce's benefit, which I thought was really interesting that was a development in this. Busiek, you mentioned that pitch that he included at the end of the collected edition. And I think one thing that he did do really well is that the 4 issues, there can be, a 4-issue story now where it kind of all does run together. I think this helps of like book 1 is Bruce, he sees it ends basically with the creature of the night. Book 2 is learning, like creating a relationship. Book 3 is it's not all as it seems to be. Book 4, like each book kind of does stand out of like, what that book is. Like it's its own chapter, but it's all connected, of course. It doesn't all run together.
Well, what I love about the start of book 2 is I'm trying to find the page so I can tell you, but the very first page. So, and it's book 2 is Boy Wonder, and it starts with this great Silver Age recreation.
Ah, yes.
Batman and Robin running, doing that thing. Fighting Boss Snooker.
Of course. Who else?
And then when you turn the page, you get a much more colorful page than we've had, I think, in the previous issue, where it definitely, the first page feels very Golden Age, and the second book, or the first book feels very Golden Age. The second book starts with a really more Silver Age color palette right away. And it's called Boy Wonder, and it feels like, it is a little bit, we're getting into the fun games of being Bruce Wainwright. He's a little bit older. He's, doing, he's figuring out who he is. It starts with a little bit of romance, right away. I love that choice. I love the choice of a colorful full page to start from. That's a Silver Age knockoff, and then you turn the page and you get a lot of those colors have bled through onto what has been a kind of dour story and have saturated that next page in Bruce Wainwright's life. That's the kind of stuff I live for.
Did you quickly, when I'm Sharon, like pause and be like, Sharon, is there a Sharon? And seeing is this a nod to a Sharon in Batman comics?
It's funny. I don't Easter egg like that.
You don't do that.
I don't get that excited about things like that unless, if it's so deeply hidden like that, it's not for me. It's an Easter egg for somebody, but if it's that deeply hidden, it's not for me. Like I'm not going to know every Sharon he's ever come in contact with and what that mean. Of course, I'm looking at like she's got like red hair. I'm like, what does that mean?
That was the first one with me.
Name? And like, is she Catwoman? Is she Batgirl? Like, what? You're immediately thinking all those.
Is her name Pamela? Yeah. Barbara?
Totally.
Nope.
No, that stuff. I'm sure there's got to be something, but like,
is it Pamela? Is it Barbara? I'm Sharon. Oh, it's just Sharon. Okay. Clearly, Kurt's like, just keep reading. Just keep going.
He's listening to this right now, and he's like, "Duh! It's Sharon Jones from from."
You host a Batman comic podcast. Come on,
Sharon
Jones. So the big question here,
Sharon Taft, by the way. Sharon Taft is her name.
a descendant of President Taft, obviously. A little history for you people. Yeah. Wow. You thought you could get that by me, Kurt. The big question with this.
Block.
Yeah.
You could get there, Kurt.
What is your takeaway on, and this, I mean, I know this is loaded.
Are you asking me how much money I make?
Yes, because everybody wants to know. And then how much did you make for every project you've worked on? The takeaway of The Creature of the Night. Like, where did you fall after you read it, thought about it, reread it for this show? Like, what is The Creature of the Night?
There's two things.
Okay.
There's two ways to answer that, because I find it's rare for me. I'm a words guy, and so it's rare for me to, when the title comes up, when we talk about the thing, that the first thing that comes into my mind is the art. Like, that's rare. That almost never happens for me. And that is, in the beginning, that is what happened with me with this book. The first thing I would think about are these glorious John Paul Leon pages, and how much, just for me, just realistic, beautiful detail. The ink is incredible. I think in these pages, and it sets itself apart from everything else that was coming out at the time. It looks premium. It feels real world. I don't feel like I'm necessarily reading a comic book. I feel like I'm reading a real grown-up version of a graphic novel kind of story.
Yeah.
And so I think probably chief in that are the color choices. Like, so all of that hits me, and I can't help but remember that. Like, it's a sensory reaction that I have when I think about this book. But because I am a words guy, because I'm a writer, the thing that when you say, what is this story? For me, this is an Elseworlds in non-Elseworlds clothing story that allows me to see and look at and think about the psychosis of what it takes for a Bruce Wayne to become a creature of the night, to become the Batman. What psychologically motivates that, which we've known from the books, from the canonical books, in a I don't want to be dismissive and say in a cursory way, but we've accepted it, and we understand the facts. But what I was craving, and what this book offers me, is a real deep dive into what that psychology is, where those motivations come from, and Bruce Wayne's own difficulties with understanding his own motivation. This story is about coming to terms with Batman. It's with Bruce coming to terms with Batman. And that's the best, for me, that's the best kind of story. I love that. Batman is a force of nature in Bruce's life, one that he must learn to weather if he's going to survive. At least weather. But he could also learn to ride that wave. And his life could be maybe better because of it. Those things are chief in my mind of what this book is about. It's about getting under the skin and understanding what it takes for a boy like Bruce Wayne to grow up and become a creature of the night.
All right. So I told you that I was going to ask you
buy that at all.
No, not at all. I think it was hogwash.
Who's been washing hogs in here?
I said that I was going to ask you a question, and I don't know how close your answer would be to mine. And vice versa. I say my answer to yours.
Yes. What a lot of people don't know is that you sent me your answer in advance. I have it here, and I'm going to open it up. We're going to see what you said this book is.
Okay.
You said this book is a couple hundred pages.
Hey! I was really wondering, what's he going to say here? Thanks for not reading the real letter.
That is a statement from my insurance.
Oh, okay. Let's bring them in. Special guest, Tim's insurance.
Dial in the insurance adjuster.
So I guess encapsulating like the whole creature of the night, sure, but then specifically the creature of the night, Thomas Wayne, if you will.
You want to know what is the actual Batman character? What is he? Is that what you were asking? Did I misunderstand you? I
don't know that I articulated it well, because I asked you, what is the creature of the night? That's the name of the book.
That's the title of the book. Yeah.
And I have a hard time calling.
You don't want to call him
Batman. Yeah, because it does seem like it is, but is he really a man? Well, yeah, he's Thomas. It's like, but was Thomas ever really a man?
Is he Thomas?
I mean, she's there to bring some sense here, Dr. Katerina Nibisi, because Bruce is writing a story. I mean, that seems pretty obvious what he's doing here, Doctor.
By the way, did you see when he goes undercover, he dresses like Matches Malone?
I didn't put that together, but thank you for that.
Like the skull cap and yeah.
See, just all it takes is a pair of glasses and nobody knows who you are. So I don't know, I think my answer works on twofold. And I don't have a good way of, being concise with it other than this Batman being not necessarily a distraction. I think there's a common you can almost say trend with people related to as much as like always need something to do. I need a list to feel accomplished. I need something to keep active and keep going. That also serves as a distraction. It keeps them moving along rather than if something like in this story, it's like sit and just let it have. It's almost like Alfred said in The Dark Knight Rises of like, it's time to stop trying to outsmart the truth. Just let it have its day. Or I don't know if he says it's stay. I don't know. He has a great accent, but let it like just sit with it. And I kind of feel like that is with this almost. I'm not saying that Bruce didn't face it when his parents were murdered, but this Batman energizes him. It keeps him going to where, as you keep bringing up his psychosis and stuff. He's not sitting and dealing with that head on to know exactly where he stands because he's got this on his mind. He's partnering up with Batman. He is Batman to fight these criminals and beat them down rather than just like accepting the situation like for what it is of what he's doing. And you can relate that to like Batman comics too. And the wear and tear on somebody who it is right there in his mind all the time. His parents were murdered by Joe Chill or, an unknown mugger. That like, that's not normal. That's constantly just like, it's there, just like punching your gut 24/7. I can't rest because I need to go prevent this from happening to somebody else. Constant boom, boom, boom. And I don't think I don't think I've done a good job, like, being concise with that. It's just like, that was like my aha and takeaway with this of like, I think that's where I'm at with what this is.
I think, and this is why I think that to look at this, I could be wrong, but I think to look at this as at face value as, he actually is. The Batman is a spirit, and it is the spirit of his dead twin brother Thomas who's protecting him. I think it does a disservice to your understanding of the story. I think if you look at it just face value like that, I think, he goes to that doctor who tells him about the history of, the spirit, the spiritual sort of history of the evidence of the kind of thing that he's experiencing with this Batman manifestation. But those ideas and those things, there's nothing in there that tells me that that's a that is the explanation. That is an explanation that I find just as hard to believe as any. And because if you don't believe in ghosts or spirits, you're gonna hear that person say that. You're gonna read this and you're gonna think, okay, fine, but that's not really what's happening. What's the real skeptical version of what's happening here? And so what I think that is in the book is him trying to make some sense out of it, because that's what Bruce Wainwright, and in a sense Bruce Wayne, is doing when he manifests the Batman. He's trying to find a way to bring order to his world of chaos. He's a boy who loses everything and is alone and a victim of violent crime. And none of it makes sense. And so he has to figure out some way to make sense out of it. So the Batman is a thing that, and this is true for Bruce Wainwright and for Bruce Wayne, the Batman is a thing that he manifests. He brings into the world to bring order to disorder, to bring order to chaos. That's what Batman does in Gotham City. And that's what this Batman Creature of the Night does in Boston. And specifically in Bruce Wainwright's world. He's trying to make sense out of Bruce Wainwright's world for him. And that's why, and so he goes to that doctor trying to make sense out of what this creature is, and he gets an explanation, and he's like, okay, great, it's my dead brother. And I'm reading that going, no, it doesn't.
Doesn't work for you.
It's easy. It's a way for him to say, okay, now I know what it is. But his motivation is to try to understand the chaos of his world and to bring order to it without taking responsibility for it himself. That's what he's doing throughout the whole story. He's dissociating the Batman character from himself. And but if you look at it as it's really just him, it's just him. And it's just his way, because he grew up on Batman books. It's just his way of making sense out of senselessness and bringing order. And that's what the Batman always does. So for me, to answer your real question, what is the Creature of the Night? The Creature of the Night, in my mind, and this is to my reading, is a psychotic manifestation of Bruce Wainwright, whose growth was stunted as a little boy, and his world is to him chaos, and it is a way for him to try to bring order to a world of chaos. And he can't make sense out of what the thing is until he finally accepts that thing is him. I think that's the journey that I go on when I read this story. You're like, I don't buy any of it. This is what's so cool about great art. So
no, it's just because I'm such a literal person that I sit there and I think that Busiek did devise it in such a way the doctor's there to make sense of it. So as a reader like me, yeah. But I also feel like it's almost like speaking to us, the audience, a little bit. And I'm so literal. You leave that office and then you still have 80 pages left in the book or something like that. That doesn't hold. It's not like you got all the answers and everything is just like, oh, okay, well, here we go. Let's go in the book and everything's explained. It's like, if you said that fully explains everything, there's challenges to that remaining in the rest of the story.
Probably. Although, let me say this. Why does the Batman go away when he gets on his meds?
That's a great question too.
When he gets off the meds, the Batman comes back.
And it comes back. And then for me also is like, there's something that is literally there because it absorbs him. But like, there's a contradiction if you're trying to go completely just like, nope, that's what it is. It's like, hold on, page 76, actually. And so it is. Usually I talk about it, and then I put the book on the shelf and I talk about it on the shelf and put it away. It's not going to happen with this one. Like, I think I'm going to read it again before I put it back on the shelf, because it is I felt a little confident of like, I think I know where I stand with the book. And I'm not saying that I question that. It's just like, ooh, I want to read it again though, because like, I don't know, there's things that you've said that I didn't realize, and things that you said that are like, I think those are different than mine, but like, it's interesting to approach it with those, like being aware of those thoughts now too.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, it's the kind of story that sits with you, and
Mm-hmm.
it will evolve. Hopefully, for me, my
Yeah.
understanding of it has evolved since I first read the book, and hopefully, it will for the rest of my life. That's why I reread things. That's why I rewatch
Yeah.
movies. Because I change, and so my interpretation of the thing changes.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, this is how I see the
Mm-hmm.
book. But and it's what I appreciate about the book, because
Yeah.
I love the deep dive into the psychology and even, yes, psychosis of what it takes to manifest the Batman into your life and have that be a thing. So that's what I love. You absolutely should read it again and see if anything sort of shook loose for you in this conversation. This is what I mean, though, when I say this is not an easy story.
Mm-hmm.
And why I was worried. Like, I thought, okay, I'm going to come on here and I'm going to tell you how much I love this book.
Yeah.
And Ryan is probably going to be like, yeah, it's not, it's not really my favorite, because I think that for you, it's, if you're looking at it at face value,
Mm-hmm.
and literally taking it literally, there's a lot of challenges like that. Sort of, you're like, I don't. So then why this? Well,
Mm-hmm.
what does this mean then? Why does this happen? So maybe if you look at it from the psychological sort of metaphorical perspective, when you reread it, you might get something different out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or maybe you'll call me and be like, "You're insane. Like, what are you talking about?"
Tim, I'm not even going to publish the episode. Like, it was just nonsense for an hour and a half.
I'm looking forward to angry comments from Kurt Busiek telling me that I've completely misunderstood his book.
Yeah.
And I'm going to feel terrible about it.
Oh, geez. No, just blame it
However,
on
I'm
me.
going to
It's
say
fine.
I'm sorry, but I enjoy what I've taken from this.
I may be wrong, but I love
Maybe
it.
I'm wrong,
So
but it's what I got out of it, and I'm loving it. So
that's a thing, a constant, not necessarily struggle. Because it's not like you view things how you view things, and a lot of times I do just take stuff like literally of like, but that's what this happened, and I know that there's a lot of art where it's like, well, challenge your viewing, challenge it, come at it from a different angle, see if there is more in it than what you got out of it, which makes I too am one that rewatches pretty often, even if it is stuff that Wayne's World is not a very deep movie, but I've watched that movie a lot. There's some stuff that's just pure entertainment.
There's also and comfort food entertainment as well.
Yes.
And that's pretty good comfort food, by the way. There's
That's
worse.
great. Yeah.
I think, by the way, if you're going to have a book that you want to revisit at different points in your life and maybe pull something new out of it,
yeah,
I think Creature of the Night is a great one for that.
Mm-hmm.
Not only because of all the different ways you can sort of come at it and interpret what the story means and what it means to Batman and what it means to us, but also because there's worse ways to spend your time than looking at those John Paul Leon pages over and over.
Yeah.
Because
excellent
you'll find
stuff.
something new every time and something new to appreciate every time. I am so sad that that the world won't get to experience more of his work. But from a completely selfish perspective, I'm sad that I'll never get to work with that man, because I fell in love with his work because of Creature of the Night. And I know that's probably ignorant because he had done so many other wonderful things, but this is where I really thought, oh man, this is the guy. And now I'm just chasing that. When I'm talking about and talking to artists, I'm looking for who's going to be that next John Paul,
It's
that's who I want to throw my lot in with.
I'm glad you said it. Because I'm like, I will always flat out come right out of like, this was from what I'm aware of, I know it now in looking him up more, like this was my exposure to him, to where then it is fun, but then there's also a little bit of like, oh my gosh, how much work I've come across from his, and I just didn't link it.
Yeah.
Now I will. When I go back, I'm like, hey, that's John Paul Leon. That's John Paul Leon. And I'm like, how did I not? It took till this story, and now I'm aware.
Is it a mystery though? Because I don't think we're alone, right? In that
Yeah.
respect. I think there's probably a lot of people like us who are fans, but still manage. There's people who sort of slip through the cracks for us or don't follow the way we should. But when you think about the incredible gift that is this book, Creature of the Night, from a man who was fighting for his life,
Yeah.
when he was turning out these incredible, life affirming pages, a story of great tragedy, but still somehow finding hope in it. There are layers upon layers that one can take from this experience, and the gratitude for the gift that he left us before he left this world. That's the one I'm going to focus on the most.
Yeah. Echo everything that you said. This book it already has, but it will get me to continue to seek out his work prior to this. I have a couple quick questions for you, and we can wrap it up. And it's funny to say that, like, we can wrap it up, because I know I'm gonna feel like when we're done here, there's a lot more we could have talked about, and yet we're sitting at an hour and a half right now.
There always is. I'll blab on about something for a while and lose all our time.
I didn't know if you remembered the questions from last time. So I'm just gonna hit you with it though.
Oh yeah.
What is your favorite part of Creature of the Night?
John Paul Leon.
Every single image drawn by John Paul Leon. Favorite part of Creature of the Night. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There you go.
Sorry, Kurt Busiek. I mean, I hope you forgive me for that.
He wrote in there many times of John Paul Leon, like, helped him, made the story better. So that's the one thing he won't come at you for, Tim, is that comment right there. Like, yeah, he's good.
By the way, can I just a quick aside, because this is what I do. I'll go on for 20 minutes talking about a thing. But this reminds me, because I was talking about how great would it be to adapt this on screen, right?
That's an upcoming question, yeah.
Oh, should I wait for it?
Yes.
Okay.
My favorite part, surprisingly, Batman meeting Gordon, the comic book version. And then that's the metaphor of what then happens the following page for real, of Bruce feels betrayed by Gordon. The comic version is Gordon turn around, haha, it's really the Joker. Gotcha. And then that's how Bruce feels the next page on that Gordon. I just thought that was brilliant. I love, like, I forget the actual term of what it's called in printing. It is the old style where the printing is like in dots. And that's every time it's the comic book page in here, every time they do that, it is such a great artistic touch. Like, I love that kind of stuff.
Cyan, magenta, and yellow.
I love that part. And then this is, oh my God. What was your favorite panel?
Well, it's
the whole book.
Yeah, no, but it is hard to, I talked about it earlier. It's hard to say panel. It's specifically that page. It's the first page in Boston in issue 2, when you have that first Silver Age splash, and then you turn that page, and the way that the colors
him on the bench,
the Silver Age splash, seep through into Bruce Wainwright's world. There it is.
The whole page.
That to me is I think my favorite page in the whole book. And so nice. I'm sorry, I'm cheating. I'm not saying panel, but
nah, I've done it. Pretty loose rules here. I mean, it's tough for me. I wrote down 2.
Yeah.
But I mean, we'll just say runner up. This is at the end of book 1 with old Thomas on the roof.
Isn't that amazing?
That's great, because even take that out of no context, you see that image, and it could really, somebody can interpret that of like, no, that's Bruce Wayne and Batman.
Well,
like,
I mean,
not even just Creature of the Night, any, like, period, the character.
You haven't even
himself.
talked about the horror, the horror movie that's in the middle of this as well.
Yeah.
with the Batman character. I mean, he's horrific and terrifying in a way that you expect Batman would be and should be.
Yeah.
And you have license to really blow it out and make him really terrifying because of what he is in this. It's really cool.
But I think I'm going to choose just a couple pages before that, and it's Bruce at the Bat exhibit in the zoo.
Oh,
Because that's another one of, to me, just in pairing Bruce and bats, you can see that image anywhere, and you make the connections of like, there's some, you can create a story around it. No context, no words, just an image.
That was one of the things. That was the thing that Kurt talks about in the compiled edition, where he said he wasn't really sure where to end the story, and John Paul said, well, why not back at the Bat exhibit at the zoo? Like, let's go back to where it started. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those, I love things like that, because it's one of those things that when you look at it now, it's like, oh, of course, well, duh, that's what you should do. But I love that he needed that other perspective of someone who was intimately familiar with what he was trying to do and what the story was supposed to be, to remind him that this is where you want to end up.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Okay, now, Tim, would you like to see this adapted in animation? You're kind of an animation king right now. You have a lot of familiarity with animation and writing for animation. So give me your best answer.
Here are my thoughts on this. I think I love this story, and I would love to see this story adapted in any medium. Mm-hmm. Here's where it gets tricky, because one of the things that I think is so integral and important to this story is the work of Jean Paul Leon, as I've said a million times. And it's much like what happened when we adapted The Long Halloween, where there's a book.
Drink.
There's a book that is, synonymous with the name Tim Sale and his style and his work and all the work he put into those beautiful pages, those iconic pages. So then, and a lot of people were afraid to make that movie. And Butch Lukic said, well, we can do it. And the first thought was, let's see if we can, bring Tim in and figure out how to adapt his style. But very quickly, he figured out that we would never be able to animate Tim Sale's style and do it justice. Not only would it be wildly cost prohibitive and expensive, the way to get it right? But even what we would call getting it right would have paled in comparison and would have made you wish you were looking at his work in the book. And so Butch wisely then said, well, then we're just not going to even do that. We're going to homage where we can. We're going to keep this thing noirish and dark shadows and, some of the spirit of what Tim Sale brought in there, but we're not going to try to replicate Tim Sale in 3D or not 3D, but in 2D animation. And I think that was the smartest move. I think it was a really good move. Some people complained about it, but I think those people didn't understand, because they didn't get the Tim Sale version of it. Those same people would have been so angry. All they would have been doing would have been tearing us down and tweeting at us for ruining Tim Sale, his work, by trying to adapt it into animation, because it just didn't look the same.
Yeah.
They're two completely different things. So I tell that story, I remind you about that story, because that's how I feel about this story. I wonder if you could do the work of Jean Paul Leon justice in animation. I think it's easier. It would be easier to get it right probably, I don't know, because I'm not an animator, but it would probably be easier to get this right than it would be to do Tim Sale's book in animation. But it would still be very expensive.
Yeah.
It would be very expensive, but it would be a triumph. It would be gorgeous. If James Gunn, I know you watch this show or listen to this show.
Yeah.
You're going to do it, it's going to take some money, but you'll get it. You get it. If you get it right, this as a premium in theaters, animated feature, Elseworlds branded under the James Gunn Elseworlds banner, I think people would come to it in droves.
Having experience in adapting a beloved story, and not just one, you've done it with Superman as well, but I mean, as highly regarded as The Long Halloween, would you accept the challenge to try and adapt this?
It's tough. I mean, if you had asked me this, if I was aware of this, if this book had happened before I was writing, this book didn't come out. I had already written Long Halloween when this book before this book came out, I think. If you had asked me though, if this book had existed, if you had asked me this before I did Long Halloween, I would have said I don't think I can do that. The Long Halloween made me excited about the challenge in a way that I think I would have been terrified of the challenge before. I think I just got thrown into the deep end on that one. But I managed to take a thing that I hold dear and is a beloved story to me, not just to fans around the world, and try to do something to do it some justice and get people excited to pick up the book. That was what Long Halloween was. I feel more confident now that I would know my way around how to approach a project like that. So yeah, I think I would take on the challenge of that today. But if you'd asked me, 5 years ago, I would have said, I don't know. Let me just do my own thing.
Let me just do The Long Halloween instead. Okay.
Yeah, right.
The Long Halloween is less pressure.
Yeah, exactly. In some ways, no, that's not true. Long Halloween is more pressure. Long Halloween, as you know, was so difficult, but what the weirdest, most difficult thing about adapting it is the fact that it's based on the calendar. That was the hardest part with the holidays. You can't get around it. And so it's like, how do you tell a cohesive story that keeps jumping ahead a month or, in time every 2 pages or something, or 2 minutes in the movie?
You did it.
Yeah. Well, luckily we
Tim.
wouldn't have that problem. This one jumps through some time in his life, but unlike Superman Secret Identity, which by Kurt Busiek, the spiritual companion to this book, which came out before Creature of the Night, a story that does a similar thing of looking at a Clark Kent in a world where Superman exists in comics and watching his life play out. That story, we saw his entire life, played out in the course of that book. This one, it's just a portion of Bruce Wainwright's life. So it's not as much to the calendar. We'd have to get right.
I haven't read Secret Identity, but you're damn right I want to.
Now you're going to, I bet.
Yeah.
Because this if there's anything about this book that you like that has to do with Kurt Busiek, then yeah, you got to see the thing that started it all. Secret Identity started the whole thing.
Yeah.
I hope he does a Wonder Woman.
Why not? Come on, Kurt.
So cool.
We're on a good first name basis now. Come on, Kurt. I want to give you.
Imagine being a little girl reading that book. That'd be amazing.
Give you the floor for if there's anything, final thoughts on this book that maybe you haven't said yet, or maybe if you already have. I just always like to give you opportunity for final thoughts. Wind down.
I will take the opportunity, but I will repeat myself, and it is to say this. This is I think this book is essential reading if you love Batman and if you love Batman comics. I think it is not. It's a difficult read if you're unaccustomed to, reading literature. I mean, if you're somebody who gets his Batman from TV and movies more than anything else, and you're not somebody who loves to sit down and curl up with a real thinker of a book, it'll be a little bit more difficult. But if you're somebody who gets excited about rethinking the very concepts at the core of what Batman means and who he is, and if you're willing to tread in the land of metaphor and psychological exploration, if you're willing to take on that challenge, and you love looking at incredibly beautiful comic book pages that you will remember for the rest of your life, please pick up Creature of the Night. They're not paying me. Nobody's paying me to say this.
This is not your hoopla. Okay, you get nothing from this.
I get nothing. I'm just a fan. And maybe I'll get a Wonder Woman story out of Kurt.
There you go. Okay, come on, Kurt.
What about you?
I mean, having read it in its entirety finally for the first time, and I'm assuming whoever's made it this far into this recording listening, they've read it as well. Then I'll just say, like, read it again, no matter where you fell on it. Mm-hmm. Loved it, didn't like it, anywhere in between. Just read it again, because I do think, I mean, as you alluded to, also of different points to your life, reread this, and you're gonna, like, I think you're gonna have a different things you're pulling, maybe a different outcome. I don't know. I just think somehow there's some art that is, I don't know how Busiek mastered writing this story, but it's not just one thing. Mm-hmm. Finish the book, done, got everything you can out of it. This is complex, and not in a way that's intimidating.
Layers that you can peel and keep peeling. You know.
Yeah, and I'm not lying. I'm going to read it again before I move on to the next thing, because I'm very intrigued of just even some of the smaller things. So,
Ryan, that's the other thing. Like, read it and talk about it with other people who've read it. This is a great book to do that with. Mm-hmm. That because you learn new things, you think about it differently when you talk to your friends and colleagues who've read it as well. I mean, I think that's my best advice is, certainly read it, but talk about it, figure it out, and remember that great art, good art, any art, mm-hmm. doesn't have right and wrong answers. There is what it means to you and what you get out of it, and what somebody else gets out of it and what it means to them. And sometimes the glorious thing that happens is that you share a point of view with somebody and you can really bond over that. But it doesn't mean one thing is right and one thing is not. I think, I bet, I don't know Kurt Busiek, but I know a lot of people in this business and who would say, I get out of it what I get out of it as the person who created it. This is what I think, but that doesn't mean that that's all the only answer there is. When you experience art, when you read a book like this, you become the storyteller. You become part of the process. And it is, it's the kind of thing George Seurat, understood, which is when he worked in pointillism, the idea of if I put different colored dots, which is like cyan, magenta, and yellow on the old comic book pages, right? When you look at it, your eye from a certain distance forms those things together and creates a whole new color out of those different colors. And you are an active participant in the creation of the work. That's what great art is and does. And I think that's what we should all be open to. And I think happily this book gives you an opportunity to take part in the story in a glorious way.
I think just like The Long Halloween. So there, got that last one in. if somebody isn't drunk yet, there you go. This is the one that's going to push them over the edge.
But I agree. That's why I love to talk about it. These are the books I love talking about, because that's how I feel about them, and I know you do too.
Yes, sir. I'm very thankful to set some time aside to come back to the show and talk to me about this book. And just come back on the show. Let's do it again sometime.
Let's do it again.
Not pushing.
You're not pushing me. Listen, one of the great things that came out of the Long Halloween was that I got to make some new friends, and chief among them, sir, is you. And I love talking about this stuff with you, and we'll be doing it for a long time, I hope.
Sounds good to me. If for some reason,
though, yes, I know this is a Batman related show, but we just announced I do have a short story coming out in a compilation in June called DC Pride Through the Years, and I'm writing an Alan Scott Green Lantern story with a terrific artist named Kian Tormey. And we are going to be that book is a collection of a few different, it's reprinted stories that have been out of print, but we will have the only original creation in that oversized book. It's like an 80-page book that's coming out in June, on June 13th. So if anybody's out
the only
there,
original story,
will be the only original story in it, and the other ones will
Wow.
be reprints of stuff that's out of print. So there's a lot of great stuff in there for certainly if you collect the really wildly successful DC Pride stuff. But our understanding of who Alan Scott has really grown a lot in recent years. His own understanding of who he is has grown a lot in recent years, and so Kian and I are really excited, and we're putting together a little story for that book. So we're really excited about it. So
Awesome.
Check that out. Pre-order it, please, if you have any interest in Green Lantern, Alan Scott, or DC Pride through the years. Remember, it's a different book. There's the DC Pride Annual #3 that's going to be out, I think in May, but we're also doing #1. DC Pride through the years #1 is coming out June 13th. So please,
with an original story by Tim.
Story by me and partnered with my pal Kian Tormey.
Excellent.
He's been doing great work on Son of Kal-El, which is terrific. He's a really great artist. I like him a lot.
And that was the next thing that I was gonna say is, plug away if people don't know where to follow you, want to keep up with anything. You started to plug your most recent story that was announced, but I mean,
I don't even wait for you to let me plug. I'm just plugging.
No, you're at it. You're on top of it. You're like, come on, Ryan, let's get going. Okay. You are on the Twitter.
Yeah, follow me on the Twitter. I keep threatening to leave the Twitter, but I'm still there. So follow me on the Twitter. I am Tim Sheridan.
You are Tim Sheridan, so it's not a lie.
It's not a lie.
You weren't just admitting that you are. You're saying, no, seriously, I am Tim Sheridan. Okay, it's pretty easy one to follow.
It was supposed. Did I tell you this? It was supposed to be I love Tim Sheridan, because that's my handle on like Facebook and Instagram. Is I love Tim Sheridan. I used to have a website, ilovetimsheridan.com. Nice. I thought it was funny.
Yeah,
I thought it was funny, right? But it was one character too many for a Twitter handle.
Oh, so come on.
Yeah, and I didn't think to do ILUV Tim Sheridan.
And then that would have been it. You'd have been fine.
But it would have been confusing, because I would have said I love Tim Sheridan. You would have seen the LOVE on the other ones. You would have seen LUV on this one. Better to just go a different direction.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's less confusing than I am Tim Sheridan.
Yeah. I know, it really needs a lot of exclamation points and an angry emoji. I am Tim Sheridan.
Because, yes, I attribute the angry emoji with Tim Sheridan. The very angry Tim Sheridan. Always angry.
Swear to me.
Yeah, swear to me. Swear to Tim. Follow Tim there. I always follow the Batman Book Club on Instagram and Twitter at the Batman BC. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Pete and I have been going through the Road to No Man's Land Omnibus. We've had a break. Schedules crazy. We're going to get back on it. And then if you want to support the show, 3 ways you can do that. Number 1, patreon.com/thebatmanbc. Number 2, tpublic.com. Type in TBBC, the Batman Book Club. I know Tim has been there. He's got a shirt.
I didn't wear it today. I should have.
Okay.
I didn't. Yeah, but I didn't wear it either. I love that logo so much, and I love that shirt.
Shout out Justin Kowalski. Appreciate it, my pal. And then last but not least, the cheapest, simplest, quickest way that you can support the show is rate and review it wherever you get your podcasts. So if you listen, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, iHeartRadio, got them all. Just go to the rate and review page, rate and review the show, because the more reviews the show gets, the more it helps spread the word. And as we all know, the word is panic. So for the writer extraordinaire, angry Tim Sheridan, I am Ryan Lauer. And until next time, read more Batman comics.